I'm a very slow producer, and the chances are you are too. You could be making music so much faster without sacrificing quality, and you may not even know it. Imagine how much more music you could create and how you could accelerate your growth as a producer if you stopped wasting your time. Ask yourself this question and be honest with yourself. Do I really spend my studio time wisely? Us producers have this tendency to get lost in all the teeny tiny details of production. Sure, sometimes it's important to take an extra moment to make sure something's sitting nicely in the mix, but other times we're just fannying around, trying to make the perfect hi-hat loop for half an hour, delicately automating a fade-in, or doom scrolling through presets. We've all been there. I know that pain too well. But how can we use our time more productively? To figure this out, I had 3 studio sessions of varying lengths to see what could be achieved with the allotted time: 10 minutes, 40 minutes, and 90 minutes. For each session, I will then share an increasingly juicier tip so that you can also get the most out of your studio time. It's time to cut the fat and figure out just how much time it takes to get a sick beat made. So, I started off by grabbing the easiest, no-nonsense, but admittedly very overused patch in Omnisphere. I played a super basic melody. From there, I added a snare, a quick kick in 808, this hi-hat loop, and that was basically it. No mixing, no arrangement, no nothing. Okay, maybe 10 minutes isn't quite enough to get something great finished. But what do you expect? But still, for what it is, that's some pretty decent progress. Now, I can hear what you're thinking.
But that's cheating. You used a hi-hat loop.
It probably is cheating, but I did it for good reason. If I didn't cheat, I wouldn't have had this groove down. You see, you can always come back at a later time and make your own drum pattern if you wish. Which brings me onto my first point. The tip I have here to save yourself some time is to use what I like to call placeholder loops. I'm not gonna lie, I used to have this thing against using loops because I would think to myself, how could I call this my own music when someone's pre-made the drums or the melody? But now, I see it as a powerful energy-saving tool. I often throw a pre-made loop down just to get the groove going so I can build a melody and then replace it with my own drum patterns or vice versa. This helps me preserve my precious creative juices. Also, if I want to use a loop in full, there's no problem. If I want to make it mine, I can just chop it up or add some weird effects, for instance. Yes, we're in Omnisphere again. I ain't got time to waste with sound design. So I started off by playing around with this bell patch and I came up with this groovy, sort of emotional melody. But I wasn't quite feeling it. Then I thought to myself, hey, what if I record it? I slow it down and I reverse it. What's the worst that can happen, right? Right?
The Earth is cube-shaped. Many centuries ago, advanced extraterrestrial beings utilized the powerful engine of Minecraft to construct a simulated reality for humanity.
You have uncovered our secrets. Now you must die.
I added an LFO on the volume and a delay with automation on the wet level. Then I ended up with this loop that kind of reminded me of Resident Evil. I thought, okay, I can work with this. I added the kick, this rim snare, then I added the hi-hats with these velocity changes to give it this nice little groove. Then I threw this 808 on there. Then I added another rolling hi-hat with an LFO on the volume to give it this pumping feeling because I didn't want to mess around with the velocity and waste more time. Then there's this little drum fill and an offbeat snare to conclude each section. At this point I was really running out of time, so I did a quick arrangement, basic master, and that's basically it. Done and dusted. Now when I was working on the 808, I liked the texture of the 808, but my issue was it was a bit too short. I tried to add these loop points so I could manipulate the decay of the 808, but I could not get a nice snippet. But I got to the point where I was like, it's fine, I need to move on to the arrangement. I can't waste any more time just playing around with this. Well, what do you know? A perfect segue into our next tip.
Make executive decisions.
I'll admit, this one is easier said than done. We need to make hard choices as a producer. The struggle is real. Some examples of this can be deciding to leave an element that you're not 100% happy with, but it works, so just leave it. Or it can be debating to remove an element that you might like, but just doesn't work for the project as a whole. It can also be recognizing when to call it a day, deciding that you've done enough, and you have to go hit that dreaded export button. Do not waste your time being frustrated. You need to move on sometimes. But these decisions are hard as a producer because we put a lot of emotion into our art. And our art almost turns into like our little baby. But the truth is, the listener doesn't really care about all the ideas that you loved and left. Loved and left? This never turns out perfectly anyway. Just get your music done and stop stressing the little things. I started off by playing with this atmospheric pad, then I added an LFO to the volume and I filtered it out to make it even more atmospheric. Then I added another atmospheric pad to make the atmosphere even thicker. You could cut that atmosphere with a bloody knife, it's so thick. This time I was getting Silent Hill vibes. What's going on? Then I added this knocky percussion that I chopped up and threw a delay on. Then I added this kalimba melody. I threw a snare down, a perk with this big delay and reverb on it. Then I got to work on the hi-hats. I wanted to use these live sounding hi-hats with these big velocity changes to give it this strong bounce. I ended up using like 4 different hi-hat layers to fill out the beat. Then I added a kick. Again, I played with the velocity to add to that bounce. Then I added this 808 man. To add to the percussion, I added these snare rolls, then I also added this vox to fill out the atmosphere even more. Then, I started panicking. I had very little time left, and I still had to do a full arrangement and mix all of the elements. So I smashed all that really quickly, and as a last minute addition, I threw in this reverse cymbal transition. 90-minute beat, finished. Now, I'm gonna be honest, it was a solid amount of progress, but it didn't turn out as great as I'd hoped. I went in there with this objective of doing complex production, mixing down all the elements, adding transitions, blah blah blah. But this resulted in me just rushing things. Because of this, I was checking the clock a lot more, and I didn't really get into the zone as much. In my opinion, I think the 40-minute beat is better because I wasn't stressed about hitting all of these marks. I was just having fun with it, and I think this resulted in a much better idea. I could come back to that with another 40-minute time block, smash it, and I think that would be a much stronger completed project. But that brings me on to my final piece of advice.
Find your flow.
This might be a bit obvious to some, but it's worth iterating. You can make a lot of progress with 90 minutes, but you can just as easily get nothing done with it. Creating music and getting into flow is like pushing a broken car down the street. Once it's in motion, you just need to keep up the momentum and you'll get quite far. But every time you stop pushing, you need to put in extra energy to get the vehicle moving again. If you check notifications on your phone, you stop pushing. If you get interrupted by the people you live with, you stop pushing. If you go to make yourself some chicken tendies in the air fryer because your belly's grumbling, you stop pushing and you will destroy your flow. Sure, sometimes you need to take breaks if you're not making any progress, but you need to set up your environment in a way where you maximize your chances of entering that state of flow. Now, we can't always expect to get a full project finished in 90 minutes. Sometimes it can take several sessions that last 2 or 3 hours depending on the kind of music you're creating. Other times, it can just be a few sessions of 40 minutes. But what's more important than the total time spent on a project is the ratio of effective to ineffective time. That's the metric that you should be aware of in order to make some serious progress on your music. It's up to you to find your sweet spot between putting time in and getting results out. I've actually learned a lot from this experiment, so maybe it's worth you trying it for yourself. Anyway, that's all from me. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.